How is everyone? Well, you'll be asking yourselves that tomorrow morning after the party tonight. Legendary stuff. Hello, my name is Doug Zanger. I'm the Americas editor for The Drum. We are a Glasgow, Scotland-based marketing publication and company dedicated to the idea that marketing can change the world. It's an ethos that we do believe in. I'm based in Portland. Get your booze out of the way. Home of the first Cascadia MLS Cup champion. You can get your booze out of the way now.
Wow, you are just starting to pick a fight.
No, I know. Listen, judging from last night's performance against Salt Lake, we're not getting back anytime soon. But I want to thank Toon for bringing me back. I was here last year. It really is a great event. And today we're talking diversifying the media mix. And as we all know, the days of picking a few channels are long gone, way in the rear view. And there's a lot of chaos with brands and with publishers at the moment and finding the best pathways forward, rather. The elephants in the room, we've got the biggies that are there, but there are thousands of others in the space. So today we want to talk about some of the issues and then just get more into discussion about what are the best ways forward. Instead of me introducing the panel, what I like to do is I like to let the panelists introduce themselves and to share a good, bad, and ugly at the topic at hand. So without further ado, let's start over here.
Hi guys, my name is James Peng. I head mobile and social acquisition for the Match Group. Match Group is a family of the leading dating apps such as Match, OkCupid, Tinder, Plenty of Fish, and many more. Let's see, good, bad, and ugly.
Good, bad, and ugly.
The good. Most of you guys in the audience probably have used one of our dating apps, and I think more than 10% of you have probably paid for one of them.
Okay. So that's a good.
The bad is a lot of people many people who use them. Unfortunately, we have a lot of uninstalls, but the good part about it is our re-engagement campaigns have been able to kind of retrieve a lot of people back into our network.
So that's a good too.
That's good. Well, I'll say, and then the
it's
ugly.
A bad good.
Yeah. Ugly is that I think we're dealing with a lot of the same issues that a lot of people are in the space, and I think fraud is one of the biggest things that is going to come up, and we've had to kind of shut down a lot of partners, reevaluate the way we look at channel mix and media mix, and I think just kind of re-strategize and kind of wipe the slate clean. And so that's been one thing that we've dealt with quite a bit over the past year. A lot of growing pains and definitely very, very ugly. So.
Yeah, that's been quite a mess. Amanda.
So Amanda LaBroscian, Experian Consumer Services, so free credit score, free credit report, and some of those companies. For us, I'd say the good is that, just overall, there's opportunity for all of us. I'd say the great thing about mobile is it's still the wild, wild west, so there's a lot of testing that can be done. The bad, I would say, is the transparency, which I know we're going to talk about a little bit later with the reporting. And then the ugly, for me, I would say my company is largely still led by traditionalists, so we have a lot of traditional mindsets, so there's a lot of education in anything we do within mobile or social.
Bryan.
Doug.
Hi.
Hey.
Aloha from way over here.
Hey. So, hi, y'all. I am Bryan Davis, and I head up audience marketing at the New York Times, and good, bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. Wild West thing there.
Yeah, there we go. So I'd say the good about what we're doing today is probably the frequency of how often we can reach readers or app downloads or subscribers. People are interacting with their phones 2,000 times a day.
Right.
I sat next to a young woman last night on the plane, and she was Snapchatting throughout the entire 5.5-hour flight, and no fewer than 600 photos of her just going.
Really?
Yeah, and so you got to think about how often you can reach people. They have their phones in their beds and the subway. in the bathroom if you're really into that. I mean,
Right.
it's just, unless you're Charmin, I don't know who needs to reach somebody in the bathroom, but you can reach anybody, everywhere, anywhere. And that to me is just fascinating. We never had a medium like that.
Right.
The bad, I would say, specifically for what we're doing, cross-device mapping. I think it's a big issue within the industry, trying to identify different readers across different devices. I think everybody, if you read the Times, you're familiar that we have 10 articles and then we ask you to pay. For us, it's really, really hard to sync across all of those different devices where you might be reading us, and you reach your 10 article limit on the desktop and you go, ha ha ha, sucker journalists, I'm gonna open up a new web browser and not force you to pay.
You're divulging all these tricks.
It's definitely no, you type in New York Times and I think one of the auto-completes is get around the paywall. And it's a big issue for us. And
Sure.
so I would say that we're trying to find solutions that, and this isn't just about trying to sell something. I think the bigger issue is user experience and trying to unify all of those disparate ways in which you interact with us to give you a better product and a better user interface. The ugly.
Yeah.
And I would say that, Amanda mentioned this, the transparency of data, and I know that we're going to talk about that,
Right.
but I think that for us, just out of curiosity, how many here have paid for advertising that you didn't actually get anything out of, that you paid for? All right, so anybody who's not raising your hand, you must sell advertising, because I guarantee everybody here has paid for some ad that you didn't actually get placement for.
Right.
And I would say that that's a big issue for us when we think about the media mix that we have and the ad marketplaces in which we interact, that we don't really have a way to have visibility into where we're reaching readers. So. Right. I know it's a big topic of discussion. We have already had a panel today, but it's definitely something that we take as a point of interaction.
Well, let's start with the customer journey, because that map today compared to even just a few years ago is, it's just, it's again chaos. Amanda, let's start with you. You're nodding very vigorously. Oh. Therefore, I'd like to start with you. What does the map look like today compared to a few years ago, and what do you think it's going to look like in a few years?
So for us, I'd say, what's interesting is we're really focusing, probably the last year, we've really focused on putting the customer at the center. And I know a lot of people say that, but this is the first time that we're actually actively doing it. We're having focus groups is one of our ways. We're interacting with them more, but we're really figuring out what mediums they want to interact with us on and diversifying the channels, and then allowing them to determine how often they really want to have exposure with us. So I'd say it's interesting because before it was, let's just hammer them with as many banners as we can. Or as many TV spots. So really listening to them and working really closely with our CRM teams to really figure out, how do they want us to engage with them?
Right. James?
Yeah, sure. I think kind of in the past, there's really only kind of brand and then DR, and just because of the ability to kind of track and distinguish. And so I think we've kind of evolved as a kind of a ecosystem and technologies, and to be able to kind of begin to start segmenting our users and start to change that message depending on who it is, depending on if you've interacted with them before. But that's still just I think it's still very fragmented in that you still don't treat people as people. And I think a lot of that, we're finally starting to get to a place where, that's starting to, the targeting is getting better, the device connections are getting better. When we look at people in our system, we're actually starting to look at people, in the ecosystem of apps that they have in our family and the various devices they access through. And so finally starting to kind of evolve and look at that in the kind of next era. And I think that when we finally, I think that the next frontier is really being able to, control the flow and control the funnel from the very, very top across the media sources, across the walled gardens, and finally be able to focus on the bottom of the funnel and even below that. So I think what I'd like to be able to spend my time on is less on the acquisition and more on kind of building the user after they become, already integrated into our system.
Interesting.
I'm just curious, how are you looking at different marketplaces or different networks to do that? Do you prioritize certain areas of the journey for different touch points? Sorry, I'm stealing your job, by the way.
You're a trained journalist. I was a former creative director, so you're fine.
No, it's because it's interesting to hear. It's something that we've been trying to do a whole lot more recently, is thinking about different touch points and different networks, knowing that a reader on Facebook is going to have a different level of interaction than somebody on Twitter or somebody that's interacting with us within the app, and trying to unify that into a journey that's less about, I think everybody here, or just growth marketers, think about the funnel. And I talk with our team about, it's not a funnel so much as it is a spaghetti, and because you can have a very different path to conversion, where if you start up you download the app and that's your first touch point, you may have 5 or 6 different ways in which we can reach you, whether it be mobile web or with a desktop banner or a Snapchat video. So going back to my question for you, do you try to prioritize, or both of y'all, do you have different ways in which you're thinking about that reader journey and prioritizing different types of experiences?
I'd say the quick answer to that is I would like to, and we think we're getting there. But the first things we're thinking about right now are just pure reach. Where's the reach? And then kind of where's the targeting? And how do you kind of combine these things together? And I think there's a few ways, but that I think it's still kind of hard to find that kind of middle ground. So focusing a lot on combining these things to get that effect. So.
And I've heard that before. I've heard other people talk about, and the answer is perfect. Like, we'd love to. And there's a lot in this space now where it's, well, yeah, we'd love to do that. But no, it is interesting. Amanda, anything to add to that?
Yes, so what we're doing is we've selected 2 or 3 of our more strategic partners to do that. So they're a little bit more established with us, and we've decided that that's we want them to help guide us on that as well. So yes, love to. We're in the process of it. It's just kind of determining what's the starting point of that, along with our other channels as well.
Do y'all think about again? I'm just going to ask a question. And
I can go off stage.
No, you can stay. You're a good-looking dude. And I ask, do y'all have certain ways that you segment your audience? And
are you trying to get free intel out of this?
Well, yeah. I'm kidding. Why would I come here otherwise?
No, it's great.
And I ask because I think, going back to your earlier question about the reader journey or the customer journey, how has it evolved? Well, you may have heard that the newspaper industry is changing.
What?
And it's not as dire as the buggy whip manufacturing, but it's safe to say that the New York Times has certainly evolved since we first started publishing in 1851. And a lot of our work today, we think about distribution and how segmentation for us is a big priority, knowing that you're going to have a different level of interaction with what we produce, and different networks are going to provide different value in those touch points. And so I wonder, is there, in how you think about your distribution, is there prioritization for certain touch points with certain segments, knowing, again, young women may be more likely to interact with you on one network more so than for us, knowing that desktop traffic is very different than mobile web?
On to that, I'll say we segment our audience into kind of uncountable numbers of different kind of niches, and based on all the different permutations that we have. And we have a crazy amount of data, if you can think about how much data people give to dating sites. And so, easily in a day we'll, segment by hundreds of different groupings just by these different combinations. And so we definitely have to message to them differently. I'll tell you where the challenging part is finding kind of media and finding places to share a specific experience, to cater a specific experience to certain segments, just because it's really tough. And very few media sources kind of have that scale to help it to allow us to kind of think about that in so many different ways. Like to think about catering to let's say young single parent females, or like African American males of a certain age. There's certain channels to do that, but it takes a lot of time. I'd like to be able to do this at scale, and right now we kind of lean on a lot of the kind of top channels that have this strong targeting to be able to combine the messaging plus the targeting right now. So
yeah, let's move on. Let's talk about web first, and where web plays the role right now. The strengths and the shortcomings. strengths of web and mobile together. So let's start with you.
All right. Well,
you have a time limit now.
I do.
I'm going to put you on the clock.
All right. I'm watching. So web, if we think about, again, going back to, we've evolved a lot since 1851, and you had the printing press, which literally was able to provide paper-to-table type service, and then you had the internet, which totally disrupted that. Now we're looking at social, and social is providing access to us via mobile web or desktop or the app, and we've only more recently started to see the biggest segment of our traffic coming from mobile devices. And so when we are trying to prioritize what type of, and mobile first, absolutely, but then you think about the purchase flow, and more people are still buying things on desktop, or at least for us, and you think about our core demographic, it's slightly older, and we have to balance what we are using as a touch point within the mobile experience or the web experience, but also trying to bring it all back to the easiest way to convey that value, that call to action, that direct response message to close that subscription opportunity. Right. So it's very much for us, going back to the idea of having the customer journey, all of these different touch points, we have to make sure that we're making them into some type of interactive funnel, because focusing on just one place will lose out on the engagement that's necessary to build up the propensity to subscribe. But if we don't focus on desktop, then we're never going to have people convert.
Right. Amanda?
Yeah, so for us, very similar. I'd say we're all subscription-based businesses. We have free offerings as well. For us, we do see that mobile is a place for discovery. It's our first touch point, but really where the conversions are happening are still a lot on desktop. It's really where people are going to investigate and have a deeper dive into our product offering, because just like in Match, they put a lot of personal information in there. So if something is different on their credit, they really want to go on their desktop to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for us, we have three main products, and it's desktop, mobile web, and then app. So on mobile, it's actually, we think about it with these two products, and that's important. That's an important distinction, because just as much as desktop converts a lot, mobile app is a very conversion experience as well. But as we notice, year over year, it's actually tougher and tougher to get people to install an app, because it's a greater and greater commitment. So we look at that and have to think about the two products align with each other. And so it's a lot easier to convince people to kind of just, load a web page and sign up, versus installing and then kind of maintaining that experience. But once we have that experience, we're able to get a lot more out of them. So
there's friction across the board on everything, but it feels like that our apps might have more friction now. And to your point of that's another app I have to maintain, or that and the other thing.
There's more and more friction every year, because if you think about all the kind of giants like Facebooks or Snapchats or whatnot, they're spending so much effort to get people to spend more time on their apps. That takes away time from somewhere, right?
Right.
So you have to think about the alternatives and positioning your not only media mix but platform mix to adjust to your customers. Right.
That's a fair point. Let's jump down to transparency, the T word, because that's a big one. How would you define transparency with
bad?
Well, that was very direct. What would you like to see more of? What would you like to see less of? So let's start with definition and then more and less. So, Bryan, you're feeling very strongly about this.
Well, I kid and I joke, because there are several partners with whom we work in this room, and when we think about transparency, it's definitely a process of give and take, or at least it should be, where all of these networks, everybody asks for just one snippet of code on the site. That's all we need. Or we just put the SDK in there, everything's going to be great. And that's so difficult to justify when we're providing so much information, and yet we don't get nearly as much back in thinking about segmentation or what type of information we can glean from these networks to tailor the on-site experience. I think about the number of publishers that now have the Facebook pixel on their site for optimization of ad spend or content delivery. And yet we're only now just starting to get an inkling of how our own traffic is interacting with our pages on Facebook. And I think that's a big problem. And the future, I'm hoping, is going to be something that's less focused on this customer journey of disparate platforms or trying to even prioritize segmentation and really tying all of this together into the own data that we have, and having transparency is obviously essential to that.
Right. Amanda?
Yeah, so for us, we're also running the risk of being able to accurately validate what's working for us and what's not. And so with that, a lot of the bigger players are the ones that are helping us basically define what the success looks like. And that's kind of a hard play for when you're trying to diversify and bring some of the smaller players in that you want, because like you said, putting this code on or another SDK, it's like, that's why we're using Tune. We don't want to have that many SDKs. Mm-hmm. And so I'd say, really it limits us with who we want to work with.
That's interesting. James?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's nice is you've seen this message evolve over the years. Like several years ago, you would say like, hey, transparency is very nice, and now it's kind of almost a default. You have to have it in order to be working with these partners. A lot of advertisers just refuse to work if you don't provide that level of transparency. So that's kind of evolving. And now it's, we're thinking about what's next. And I'd say that, it's becoming a place where even if there's transparency, sometimes like that transparency doesn't necessarily prevent fraud now. So we're kind of on that next level now. So that's the biggest questions I have these days.
What are the challenges that you guys are seeing with both acquisition and retention, and how are you addressing each? And we'll probably need to go a little bit paced up on this one. So we'll start with you, James.
Sure. One thing I mentioned earlier is just that all these other kind of core apps that people are now just defaulting to, like the first ones you go to install on your phone, are becoming, just kind of flagship ones that stay on your phone. And so all your product developments, everything you're doing is kind of fighting against this momentum, or this, that trend. And so the things that we do to attack it is, one, kind of make sure that we control the right products that we present to the users at any given time, and then kind of we make sure to improve our targeting. I think making your impressions as efficient as possible is going to help you to kind of reduce waste and make your spend much more efficient. And then I would say that kind of echo the same thing for the retention front, is just maximizing the ability for you to kind of build that bottom of the funnel.
Right. Amanda?
Yeah, so I'd say for us, we're really noticing, we have a unique service that we're really trying to fit into everybody's everyday life. So with what you were saying with the phones, it's, people have limited attention spans now. They don't have much space on their phone outside of games and social apps. So what we're really doing is trying to make sure that whatever we're offering up, we're diversifying based on what their need states are. And that's really helping us change our product mixes that we're developing. We're constantly testing and getting responses back from our consumer base just to find out more information of what they're really looking for, but then also trying to make sure that our apps and even our website has a quick glance at what they need, but also the apps are small enough in size that they are willing to use it on an everyday basis, or at least hopefully once a month.
And that insight's got to be helpful, especially because you'd mentioned that you're a traditional company.
Yes.
That's got to be super helpful. So, for others that have traditional companies, that insight probably, both of you actually. Yeah. It has to be, it's progressive, but it doesn't happen overnight, but at least you have proof points and you're able to push things forward. That has to feel good.
Yeah, no, it's great. You're right. It's absolutely an accurate statement. I'd say for us, one thing we're challenged with still is that all of our testing is on the website. That doesn't tell us really how the mobile user is and how they engage. So what we've been doing is trying to do specific UX testing solely on mobile apps so that we can help influence the products that we're putting out based on what they need.
Okay.
We're in a very similar position in that we think about we call them these virtuous behaviors that lead to your likelihood to retain the product. And we try to focus very, very early on in making what we have part of your daily life. One of our core KPIs is habituation. How many people are opening up the app on a regular basis? We have an internal metric that we call active days, and it's the number of times that you are coming back to the site, reading something, sharing something. And so we know that we spend a lot of time on user acquisition, and I know that the more installs that you have, the better that you look to your boss. But when it comes back to what is actually driving value for the business, you have to be, if it's a split, it's got to be 30% user acquisition and 70% user retention or something like that.
Right.
Because so many of us, and it's within the industry, it's this growth marketing mindset. And I think we really need to shift into those behaviors that Amanda's talking about that are core to showing value and relevancy right from the beginning.
Got it. All right, we'll start with you. One piece of actionable advice people can walk out with today to improve diversification of company's media mix.
I would suggest, and especially since we're talking about media mix and just advertising, make sure that you are doing a really good gut check and analysis, not once a year, not once a quarter, every day. And if it's a automated CSV report, or if you can hire an out-of-work NASA scientist to build you a SQL dashboard, look at that data every day and try to find out what networks are working, what segment mix makes sense, because you are probably running ads that suck. And it takes a lot of, and hey, we've run some bad stuff too. Everybody's doing it. And unless you start to look at that data, you're going to start paying for exposure to audiences that really don't care. And relevancy, if you are becoming irrelevant to these audiences, they're going to tune you out. So that would be my suggestion.
Amanda.
Yes, so for me, I would say just thinking about diversifying your media mix. So what's something we've always done is 70% of our budget typically goes to your proven partners, and then 20% is those ones that they're almost becoming, so they're more of the vetted partners, and then 10% in new testing. So any plan we do, we try to have set aside 10% budget for testing out new partners, new segments, new anything, new creative. So I'd say it's been worked really well for us. I worked on it on many clients. So.
James.
Yeah, I'd say that's a really good point. I think we follow a similar methodology in testing, but I'd say it's easy to just stick with the two or major ones that work out there. But I'd say have a plan for the other areas of media that you aren't strong in, and always be attacking them. Like whether it's kind of programmatic, direct partners, assuming that you're efficient on your top channels, the top performing channels, you always want to be testing those guys to make sure that you're efficiently accessing what you aren't exposed to currently.
Cool. James, Amanda, Kanye West, Bryan, I'm Taylor Swift. No, thank you guys very much. Appreciate it. We'll see everybody out there for lunch. Please, by all means, come introduce yourself to us. And thank you again to Tune, and thank you all very much for being here today. Appreciate it.